Shalom, shalom. Let's make sure we got volume. Okay. Shalom, shalom. Let's see how we're sounding.
Shalom, shalom.
Okay, we're sounding good. Let's see. Alrighty. This is Elvin Israel from RPK, Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom, where we concentrate on resurrection, prophecy, and kingdom. And what we're finna do today, we're going to finish up my Genesis series. It's going to be part 5. Now, I know that I skipped a lot of verses in Genesis, and the reason is because I plan on going throughout you being at the university, us picking up on some of this information. So you have to stay tuned in order to get the information of what's going on in the rest of Genesis. But I'm going to go ahead and give a synopsis of it so we can finish the Genesis series today. You have in Genesis 1, we done went over that what Moses was doing. All right, well, first of all, I would like to revert back to Josephus, right? Because he explained it thoroughly so we can have the correct wordage of how the Jews of the first century viewed Moses, right? And his writings. So now, in the preface, I want to start at line 18, page 31. It says, "But because almost all our Constitution depends on the wisdom of Moses," this is why it's called the law of Moses, "our legislator, I cannot avoid saying somewhat concerning him beforehand, though I shall do it briefly. I mean, because otherwise those that read my book may wonder how it comes to pass that my discourse, which promises an account of laws and historical facts, contains so much philosophy," right? And then we want to go down to verse 20. "I mean, unless..." line 20, "I mean, unless they be taught first of all that God is the Father and Lord of all things, and sees all things, and that thence he bestows a happy life upon those who follow him, but plunges such as do not walk in the paths of virtue into inevitable miseries. Now when Moses was desirous to teach this lesson to his countrymen, he did not begin the establishment of his laws after the same manner that other legislators did. I mean, upon contracts and other rights between one man and another, but raising their minds upwards to regard God and his creation of the world, and by persuading them that we men are the most excellent of the creatures of God upon earth." And I want to skip to line 24. "I exhort Therefore, my readers to examine this whole undertaking in their view, for thereby it would appear to them that there is nothing therein disagreeable either to the majesty of God or to his love to mankind, for all things have here a reference to the nature of the universe, while our legislators speak some things wisely, but enigmatically, and other things under a decent allegory, but still explain such things as require a direct explication plainly and expressly. So now, in other words, what Josephus was saying, who was a first century Jew, that when Moses was writing the Torah, when he was formulating the Torah and etc., he was trying to lift the minds of those Israelites coming out of Egypt into the Most High, into the pattern of which the Most High showed him on how to be virtuous. And what Moses did, the way he relayed that information was by giving them something that they could relate to, as not as the exact explanation, but as a decent allegory or as a different way to look upon the heavenly things or the spiritual things, in which with Christ, when he came upon the scene in the first century, he was actually explaining those spiritual aspects from looking at the literal or the physical aspect. So that's all Moses was doing. He was using the physical things in order to explain spiritual things. And people today are getting caught up in the physical things because they don't understand the point behind the physical things. So this is what we're going to do. And this is what Moses was doing in Genesis 1 when he was bringing in Genesis. A lot of people think that Moses was concentrating on the creation of the world. That's not what was going on. He was using a popular story that was in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and all that stuff. He just did his little swing to it. But he was using a popular story on the creation of the world in order to explain to those Israelites what they were supposed to do in order to please the Father. Because remember, coming out of Egypt, they were supposed to be a nation of priests. And what do priests do? They do the work, they do the worship, they do the supplications and everything for the nations, for everyone on the planet. So that's what they were supposed to do coming out of Egypt, where we know they transgressed. And through that transgression, he took that priesthood and only gave it to a specific family. And that specific family was going to be the priest over Israel until they got correct in order for them to be the priests of the world, which was the original plan. So in Genesis 1, this is what we're seeing being formulated. We see him going through the creation story, not just teaching a deeper understanding of what's going on. And if you didn't look at my first 4 series of Genesis, you see exactly what's going on. So we're going to skip, the lights and the animals and mankind. We're going to skip over all those because if you really want to know what's going on, this is just him anointing those priests in order to govern the temple, right? And he's actually making the animals, and we're going to go through what the animals were and etc. a little bit, and we're going to hit on the main point or the focal point of Genesis 1 and as a whole. So first thing first, we're going to show you how animals are used throughout ancient Hebraic literature, okay? And the thing that I would like to go to, first of all, I want to go to Genesis 1, and it would be pretty much day 6. So that's Genesis 1 and 24. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures after his kind, cattle and creeping things, and the beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And then eventually they made man, correct? So when Genesis going on, everything that people needed to survive and everything that people needed in order to do that first temple worship as well as the second temple worship was in the creation narrative by Moses. But That's the overview. Now, if you know ancient Hebraic mindset, they said that scriptures had 3 different views, right? You have the original story, then you have the story that teaches a moral lesson, and then you got the story that teaches the spiritual lesson, okay? So you got the original story. So you're reading it for what the story is. Then you're reading it to get the moral lesson from it, and then you're reading it to get the spiritual lesson from it. So that's the ancient Hebraic mindset. Scriptures were 3-fold. So we're going to the last fold, the spiritual now. So you got the animals being introduced, right? So we done already said that Genesis 1 is all about the creation from the heavenly temple to the reflection of it on the earthly temple. So in the beginning, he created heaven and earth. He's literally talking about temples here. He's not talking about the universe, okay? He's talking about temple. This is temple typology, right? So within this temple typology, right, now animals are introduced. So if you go to the book of Enoch, right? You go to Enoch, and I'm going to show you this in 2 different ways, right? First of all, you go to Enoch Chapter 89, and everybody know I'm an Enoch fan, right? And what Enoch is ancient Hebraic literature, oral, that was passed down. Eventually somebody wrote it, and etc. They probably added their own thoughts, but it was found in the BC era. So you have something called the animal apocalypse, and what was said was that let me get this right. Let me see here. 83, and now my son Methuselah. This is Enoch, right? And Enoch is saying in chapter 89 how he had a vision dealing with animals, right? So the animal apocalypse, it actually goes through what the Tanakh was going over, dealing with the kings and etc., all the way down to Christ under the Roman Empire. But if you read, starting at chapter 89, he's using nothing but animals to, that's why it's called the animal apocalypse, but he's using nothing but animals to explain to his audience, Methuselah, or his son, but, you know, this is handed down information. So they're using this information, he's using animals to explain the different nations. And let me show you. You go to 89, and we can go to 10. And they began to bring forth beasts of the field and birds. So there arose different genes: lions, tigers, wolves, dogs, hyenas, wild boars, foxes, squirrels, swine, falcons, vultures, kites, eagles, ravens, and among any that was born a white bull. So you got your clean animals and unclean animals. But if you go through the animal apocalypse, you understand that this represents the different nations. Okay, so that's in the book of Enoch. But and shalom to everybody out there that's listening. And for the people, y'all see the RPK shirts in the back. If you need one, holler at me. Send me a message, and I got you. Might have to pay your own shipping and handling, though. But anyway, so that's one way. That's in the book of Enoch that animals was used. And, you know, a lot of y'all might not say, hey, well, the book of Enoch, I'm not going to listen to that. It's not in the canonical, what they said was the canonical. Sorry about that, y'all. I didn't know that it was in here. Sorry. Let me get that out. So now let's go into the scriptures and show you where they did it again in the scriptures. Let me straighten it up. Okay, so now, once you go into Acts 10, right? Let's go to Acts chapter 10. Because a lot of people don't understand what exactly what was going on in Peter's vision. So I got to hit that too. And then we're going to go into what's going on in the book of Exodus. But now I'm just trying to show you how he was actually using, shalom, how he was actually using Peter. Because a lot of people don't get Peter's vision, right? And they try to teach Israel only. But if you understood Peter's vision, you will understand how this isn't about Israel only, but all nations. And on top of that, they're using animals, unclean animals at that, to explain these other nations. Just like what happened in the book of Enoch. So now let me show you. So you go to Acts 10, and I want to start at verse 9, right? On the morrow. So this is Acts 10, verse 9. On the morrow, well, we could start at 8. And when he had declared all these things unto them, he sent them to Joppa. And we know that Joppa, who was that went to Joppa to teach? Jonah, I believe it was Jonah that went to Joppa to get those. Let me make sure first before I even throw that out there, and people fact check and say no. That's not what happened. So just give me 1 second. Let me make sure that I'm not misquoting. So we go to Jonah, because Jonah went to, it was in Nineveh, right? Let me see if it say anything about Joppa, because I might have not got it. And I had to look it up. And I should have already had this. Well, y'all can fact check it later. I know Nineveh, but I thought it had something to do with Joppa. But anyway, we're going to start at 10 and 8. And when he had declared all these things unto them, he sent them to Joppa. Verse 9. On the morrow, as they went into their journey and drew nigh to the city, Peter went up on the housetop to pray about the 6th hour. And he became very hungry and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance. So now listen to what's going on. And he saw heaven open, and a certain vessel descending up unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at the 4 corners. So you got the 4 corners, and let down to the earth. So you got the 4 corners of the earth, wherein were all manner of 4-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. And the voice spake unto him again the 2nd time, What God has cleansed, that call not thou common. And this was done thrice, and the vessel was received up again into heaven. So first of all, this is one thing you got to understand. If the Most High is telling you to do something, you do it. And this is how much the law of Moses had that entanglement upon them, that Peter would defy the Most High in order to keep the law of Moses, which is, that's something you're not supposed to do anyway. But the point is, and people misuse this, it's talking about food, and he's making all things clean to eat at this point in time. That's not what was going on the rooftop dealing with Peter. But you ask people what's going on, what's behind that vision, they can't tell you the meaning of that vision. They don't know. Why the 4 foot? Well, they tell you, well, that actually represented what Cornelius was coming in. And Cornelius being a quote unquote from the northern kingdom, a Gentile mindset, then that would represent him being unclean and the Jews calling him unclean. That's not correct. That's not what's going on here. Let me show you what's going on here, okay? What Peter is doing, he's getting a vision about something that was prophesied in Hosea. And we know Hosea dealt with the northern kingdom, correct? But let's see what the prophecy of Hosea actually said on why he was able to pull, exactly what the vision was representing. So let me get there. And I'm so used to using my Septuagint. I got to get back into the KJV. All right, so now you go to Hosea chapter 2, right? And I want to start at verse number 16. Hosea 2 and 16. And it shall be at that day, said the Lord, that thou shalt call me Ishi, and thou shalt call me no more Baali. For I will take away the name of Balaam out of her mouth, and they shall be no more. And they shall no more be remembered by their name. Now listen to what's going on in verse 18. And in that day will I make a covenant for them. So who is them? This will be the northern kingdom. And that day I will make a covenant for them with the beast of the field, and with the fowls of heaven, and with the creeping things of the ground. And I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the earth, and will make them to lie down safely. So this was all about these animals that he was using actually represented the nations that was coming against Israel, right? This all represented all nations that would actually war against Israel, as well as Judah. These will be outside nations. And in that day, I will make a covenant for them. So he's making a covenant for the northern kingdom, as well as we know that the covenant also embarked the southern kingdom also. But right now we're concentrating on the northern kingdom. And in that day, I will make a covenant for them with the beast of the field, and with the fowls of heaven, and with the creeping things of the ground. And that's why in Acts 10 vision, what did he see? I saw a certain vessel open up, wherein it had all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things, and fowls of the air. Letting know that that covenant that was prophesied in Hosea, which was going to be the new covenant, that covenant of peace, it was getting ready to embark. And we know it was getting ready to embark because eventually he went out and he gave the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit was given out. But this was something that was getting, the northern kingdom was going to partake of it, but the covenant was for those of the Gentile race or the Gentile fashion to come in a covenant of peace through the Holy Spirit with the northern and southern kingdom. So this is what we're seeing happening with the house of Cornelius first, as well as time progressed, it went on. But the point was, he was using animals to explain the nature of these Gentile nations. So when the animals are introduced inside of Genesis, that's what's going on. Okay, so now, and the brother said Jonah 1 and 3. So let's go back. Let's see here. Jonah 1 and 3. There you go right there. That's it. But Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord and went down to Joppa. And he found a ship going to Tarshish. Yes, that's it right there. I knew Joppa was somewhere in there. But, so, we have it right there. So you have him using him in Hosea prophesying that the wild beast will have a covenant. A covenant will be made with the wild beast for the northern and southern kingdom. But it was concentrating on the northern kingdom, but we know it's for the northern and southern kingdom, right? And then we have the vision what Peter saw on the rooftop, that they was all under the four corners, right? The four corners of the sheet. And it came down to earth, which represented the four corners of the earth, which had all of the wild beasts in it. And he told Peter, what he have cleansed, no man can call common, which was him making a covenant, or them getting ready to bring in the covenant with the wild beast, aka the nations that was considered unclean because they were not Israelites. But he was using animals in order to explain the nature of these nations. And that's all that Moses was doing. This all they was doing in the quote unquote Old Testament, or the Torah and the Tanakh. They was worried about the characteristics of these nations and etc. So they used animals, or they use other means of explanation to explain the characteristics. That's why when Moses came out with the dietary law, and you can find this throughout all the literature left over by the Hebrews, or the ancient Hebrews, that when Moses came in with the dietary law, he wasn't saying don't eat pork because of the parasites, or don't eat the bottom feeders because they eat garbage. That's not what he was saying. He was using the characteristics of those animals and telling people to stay away from animals that have such characteristics, which meant that if you stay away from animals that have such characteristics, and they put so much emphasis on food in the ancient Eastern world, because eating was a blessing. And they told you, if you read like ancient Eastern literature like Josephus and etc., it tell you one of the worst things that could ever happen to any nation was a famine. Famine was the worst thing that could happen to any nation. So they put a lot of emphasis on the rain and on food. So the emphasis that they put on food, they was like, okay, well, stay away from this animal that have this characteristic, which meant spiritual meaning, stay away from people that have these type of characteristics, such as the pig, which is a violent animal, eat anything, consume. Even past when it's full, it consumes and consumes and consumes until there's nothing left to consume. Stay away from these type of individuals. That was the point behind the dietary law. It wasn't for you not to eat pork or stuff like that. But once again, you got to go inside of the scriptures in order to understand this, as well as the ancient Hebraic literature. It breaks it down for you. Even some of the church fathers broke some of that down for them, even though we don't listen to them. Okay, so now, when we don't listen to them all the way, some of the stuff they say makes sense because it could be found in other Hebraic literature, and that's when I listen to them, only then. So now let's look at some of the parallelism now, because remember we said that what's going on with Moses, right? Moses is using Hebraic idioms. He's using a deeper understanding to explain to the children of Israel who just got out of Egypt. He's using them to explain to them a deeper spiritual meaning of worshiping the Father, right? So once again, you're thinking that he's talking about the creation of the universe, but what he's really talking about is the creation of a systematic constitution that evolves around the worship of the Father, which we know in the ancient Eastern, they used temples for that. So he was using, and I don't want to use the word religion, but that's pretty much what it was, a belief system. He was trying to use the creation narrative to explain to them how they were to worship the Father in a manner that was feasible for the Father, or to the Father. You know, he don't dwell in buildings, but them coming out of Egypt, them used to seeing buildings, them used to seeing the Egyptian priests do this and that, and them used to seeing sacrifices and all that stuff. So Moses did not try to cut it off cold turkey. He gave them something that they could relate to and still find a way to worship the Father. So now, let me show you the parallelism between the temple or the tabernacle that was erected in the wilderness, and with the cosmology that was spoken of in Genesis 1. So we're going to go back and forth to show you some parallelisms first, and then we're going to get down into the meat of what exactly is going on in Genesis 1 compared to, or parallel to, what was actually being spoken of the tabernacle, and it's showing you what actually Moses was doing with the Genesis 1 narrative. So now, let's look at the first parallelism, okay? We're going to go to Exodus 39:43. And I was going to do this on my other program, but my children, they had to go to sleep, so I had to do it on my phone, which I did not want to do it on my phone, but I got to get this information out. And I'm going to start my new series, which is the feast days. I already got the first lesson already ready, so I'm probably going to try to do that tomorrow. But let's hit it. Exodus 39:43. Now, I want us, and shalom, everybody just listening, shalom. I want us to listen to the wording that Moses used. Because Moses, the first 5 books was said that Moses created all of them. So I want you to look at the wording that Moses used dealing with the tabernacle in the wilderness, as well as the Genesis 1 narrative. So now, Exodus 39:43. And Moses did look upon all the work. So now, Moses looked upon all the work. And behold, they had done it as the Lord has commanded. Even so had they done it, and Moses blessed them. Right? So now, you go to Genesis 1:31. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and morning was the 6th day. So you go, once again, you got Exodus 39:43. And Moses did look upon all the work, and behold, they had done it. Sorry about that. Moses did look upon all the work, and behold, they had done it as the Lord has commanded. Even so, they had done it, and Moses blessed them. So you got Moses looking at all the work, and then in Genesis 1:31, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. So you got God looking at all things, or the Elohim looking at all things, and realizing it was good. Then you got Moses looking at all things and realizing that it is good, right? So if that don't do it for you, we're going to go to Exodus 40:33. And look what it says. Exodus 40:33. And he reared up the court round about the tabernacle and the altar, and set up the hanging of the court gate. So Moses finished the work. That was the end of the work of the tabernacle, right? You go to Genesis 2:1-2. And the heavens and the earth was finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day, God ended his work, which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work, which he had made. So the end of the tabernacle, Moses finished it. He finished the work, right? The 7th day, God or Elohim finished the work. It was all over with, just like all of the tabernacle was over with, right? But we're going to go into detail of that in just a second. I want to show you something else, right? Let's go to Genesis 2:15. So we're just using parallelism right now, right? We're showing you the parallelism between the cosmetology and the tabernacle, on how Moses explained both of them to show you that what Moses was actually trying to explain to the children of Israel, right? So we're going to go to Genesis 2:15. And the Lord God took the man, so we got man, right? And put him in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. So we know that Adam, right, was put into the Garden of Eden, and Adam represented a priest. He was the first priest, and he was to be put in the Garden of Eden to dress it, or to cultivate it, or to maintain it. Now, once again, we don't take this as a literal story. We take this as different aspect of ideology and thought process on how to be virtuous and to please the Most High. But you got to have that same mindset in order to be a priest. So we got man being put in the garden to dress it, right? Man's given authority, put in the Garden of Eden, and we know that in the book of Jubilees, the Garden of Eden is actually referred to as the Holy of Holies. So man, who would represent the priest, put into the Holy of Holies, or the Garden of Eden, to dress it, right? So now, you go to Numbers 3:5-8. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Bring the tribe of Levi near, and present them before Aaron the priest, that they may minister unto him. And they shall keep his charge, and the charge of the whole congregation before the tabernacle of the congregation, to do the service of the tabernacle. So we see that the priest was given the job to do the service of the tabernacle. They was put over the congregation, or put over Israel, and to do the ministering to the high priest, and they was chose to do the work of the tabernacle and to keep it, which is the same thing with what Adam was supposed to do, because we know the high priest would have been the word at the time. So Adam was to minister in a priest manner, or to keep charge of the garden. He was set over quote unquote mankind. He was supposed to be the one that was over mankind and was supposed to do the right thing in order to keep the garden, in order to do everything the Most High or the Father required him to do, and to minister or bring that completion or perfection to the high priest, which would have been the word, and then they bring that perfection to the Father through worship and etc. So we have here in Numbers 3 that the job of the priest was the same job that Adam was given in Genesis. Okay, so they have the same job. The only difference is Adam was said to be in the Garden of Eden, and we don't know that this is talking about a tabernacle unless we read other ancient Hebraic literature, like the Book of Jubilees that was in the Qumran community, and it lets it be known that they was actually talking more about temple typology, things dealing with the tabernacle, and not a literal garden or a literal tree. So we see that in Numbers, they're talking about the priest's work in the tabernacle. So according to the ancient Jews, Moses is using Adam as an example of the priest's work in the tabernacle, right? So now you go to Genesis 3:24. Genesis 3:24, and we have, so he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword, which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. So that's north, south, east, west, right? So now you go to Exodus 26. Exodus 26, 30 through 34. And thou shalt rear up the tabernacle. Once again, tabernacle, according to the fashion thereof, which was showed thee in the mount, when he went up on the mount. Remember, he saw into the heavenly. And thou shalt make a veil of blue, and a purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen of cunning work. With cherubims shall it be made. And thou shalt hang it upon the 4 pillars of shittim wood with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver. And thou shalt hang on the veil under the taches, and thou that thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy place. And thou shalt put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy place. So in Exodus 26, you see that they had to create the fine linen, right? The linen. And upon that linen, they had to put the image of the cherubim upon that image. And that image, it covered pretty much, it overlaid the tabernacle. The mercy seat. It overlaid all of that was in the most holy place, or the holy of holies, to show you that the cherubim was set to guard the holy of holies, or the most holy place, which is the same thing that happened in Genesis 3:24. The cherubim was placed to guard the holy of holies, because that's where the tree of life was at. The tree of life was in the Garden of Eden, and the Garden of Eden would have been the holy of holies. So you can see, once again, this is all temple typology right here. All right. So now you got Genesis 2:9. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. The tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So now you got the tree of life, right, in the garden. So now let's go to Exodus 25, 31 and 32. And thou shalt make a candlestick of pure gold of beating work shall the candlestick be made. Now listen to as it explains this candlestick. His shaft and his branches, his bowls, his knops, and his flowers shall be of the same. And 6 branches shall come out of the side of it. 3 branches of the candlestick out of one side, and 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side. So now, you see how it's using the same type of language dealing with the tree of life. When you think of a branch, hopefully you think about trees. So this candlestick is considered to have branches and flowers and a shaft. Same thing that trees have. So this candlestick, right, represented the tree of life that was inside of the garden. So once again, hopefully we see that Moses speaks of the tabernacle one way, right? Then he speaks of the tabernacle another way, right? So once again, remember Josephus was saying that Moses was trying to teach the children of Israel to look toward heaven and to worship the God in heaven, knowing that he's the Lord and God over all. So Moses was using it, doing this different ways, okay? He wasn't trying to teach people about the creation of plants. He wasn't trying to teach people about the creation of pork. That's not our animals are unclean and clean animals. He wasn't trying to teach them about the creation of the sun. He wasn't trying to teach them about the creation of the moon. He wasn't trying to teach them about the creation of the heaven or the creation of the earth. That's not what Moses was doing. They have learned through Egypt. They didn't already knew all the stories about that while they was living in Egypt. What he was doing, he was using that type of language to teach them about how the earthly tabernacle was going to be and how that tabernacle is very important, and it connects heaven and earth together through that tabernacle system, which is the only system that was going to be used in order to worship the Father. This is what Moses was doing. He was using something that they was already familiar with, a story of creation, to explain the deeper meaning on this is how we're going to please the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So now, let's go to Ezekiel 28 and 13. So we're going to have to go to Ezekiel for this one. And we know that even though this is about the king of Tyre, listen to what their understanding was about the stones inside of the Garden of Eden. Ezekiel 28 and 13. And we know, once again, we know this is about the king of Tyre, but this is dealing with the stones that he had on, which is supposed to represent what with the stones that was in the Garden of Eden. And I think my book of Adam and Eve, I did not look it up, but let's see if they have anything here. And if I can't find it, I'm just going to keep going. We got the bright nature of man taken away. The tree of life and the garden. I'm pretty sure it's in here somewhere about how beautiful the stones were in the Garden of Eden. I'll look it up later. Okay, we got them the comfortable in the cave of treasures. That's after they get kicked out, though. I have to look at it later, but I'm pretty sure it's something in there, guys. We'll look it up later. But Ezekiel 28:13, it says, "Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was created thee in the day that thou wast created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire." So we see that these stones, right, these beautiful stones, was supposed to be in the Garden of Eden. And if you go to Exodus 28:17. Look what the priest had to wear. And thou shalt set in the settings of stones 4 rows of stones. The first row shall be a sardius, a topaz, and a carbuncle. This should be the first row. The second row, emerald, sapphire, and a diamond. The third row, a langur, agate, and amethyst. In the fourth row, a beryl, and an onyx, and a jasper. So we see that these are the same stones. These precious stones are the same stones that was located in the Garden of Eden, according to Ezekiel. Okay? So now, hopefully we're good with that. So now let's go into the bread and butter of it all. So we have the creation, right? And in the creation, what Moses explained, you had the visible heaven, you had the visible earth, and you had the invisible heaven. And in the temple, we had the outer court, which was visible, the inner court, which was visible, and the Holy of Holies, which was invisible because it had a covering over it, and no one could go in there except the high priest. So now, let's get the parallelism, right? We're going to parallel the creation of the tabernacle with Genesis 1:1, the creation of the earthly tabernacle with Genesis chapter 1, and we're going to end it with Genesis chapter 2. Let me just show y'all what Moses was actually explaining to them. So we're going to go to Exodus 40:17, and we're just going to show you the parallel. This is about the earthly tabernacle, right? And if I'm off, just let me know I'm off. Let's see if I'm off or not. Let's see what Moses was actually trying to teach the children of Israel. Okay, here we go. Exodus 40:17. And it came to pass in the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up. Okay, so now if people don't understand what's going on here, it's the first month, the first day of the month. This will be what we will call creation of the tabernacle. First day, first month. So the first day of the month, this is what we would call pretty much a new year, right? So if they are creating a tabernacle, this is a new creation. A new tabernacle, a new creation, right? So now let's parallel it. And it came to pass in the first month, in the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth, right? So we have the beginning, and I guess I can keep reading. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the earth. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and etc. So I can't go into that right now because it's going to actually show in just a second. But anyway, so we got the first day of the first month. That's the beginning, right? That's the beginning. In the beginning, God created heavens and earth, and we done already went through. If you done already went through my first 4 parts of this series, we see that the heaven and earth dealt with the temple system, or the worship of the tabernacle, which was further rectified in the temple creation. But so we got the first day, heaven and earth, first month, first day, the tabernacle, right? Now, then we're going to go to Exodus 40:18. And Moses reared up the tabernacle and fastened his sockets and set up the boards thereof and put in the bars thereof and reared up the pillars, right? So now what you have Moses, he's using all of the elements or all of the accessories that was used for the tabernacle, right? So now he got the outskirts of the tabernacle. He's putting it together. He's getting all of the dimensions, all of the things that's needed in order for the tabernacle to stay fit, stay in place. So he's putting everything where it should go in order to give it a body, to put some bones in it. He's getting the bones ready first. So now, We're going to go into Genesis 1. We're going to read 2 through 5. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And we know the tabernacle, it did not have a form in the beginning. It was just there. And Moses started having to put these certain accessories, these certain parts where they could go so we can start forming the tabernacle. But look, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the earth. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, and that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and morning was the first day. And we done already went through this. If you looked at our series, we understand that this is bringing in the high priest, and what the high priest was supposed to be doing, what the high priest was explaining, or the service that the high priest was doing, and how the high priest was supposed to interact with mankind and explain to mankind his functions. Was he going to do the light? Was he going to be in the light, or the will of the Most High, or in the darkness, the will that wasn't of the Most High? Same thing Moses was doing. Moses was bringing together the tabernacle. He was doing it the correct way. Moses would have been representing that light right there. And the darkness would have been anything that was going against the tabernacle. All right, so now, let's keep going. If that's not doing it for you, let's go to Exodus 40. We're going to read, 19 through 20. And he spread abroad the tent over the tabernacle, and put the covering of the tent above upon it, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he took and put the testimony into the ark, and set the staves on the ark, and put the mercy seat above upon the ark. So now, listen to what happened here. So now, and he spread abroad, so they got the tent, right? And he spread abroad the tent over the tabernacle. So now you just got the tabernacle, right? So now, he put a tent over the tabernacle, and put the covering of the tent upon it. So now you got the tabernacle, right? So then you got a tent placed on top of the tabernacle, and then you got the covering put on top of the tent. So now, what's happening in Genesis 1, 6 through 8? And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which was above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So now let's run through it. Shalom, shalom. Let's run through it, what just happened, right? So now, back to Exodus 40. And he I started at 19. And he spread abroad the tent over the tabernacle. So you have a tabernacle, and you have a tent, right? That's two. And he put the covering of the tent above upon it. So now he covered the top of the tent. So that would be the firmament, right? He's covering the top of the tent as the Lord commanded Moses. So now the tent is now a separation, right? So you got the tabernacle, you got the tent, and you got the covering. So now you got the outside is being separated from the inside, right? The outside is being separated from the inside by the covering of the tent. So the covering of the tent would represent the firmament, and he called the firmament heaven. So when they was thinking about heaven, they would have been looking at the covering of the tent, or the thing that blocked the outside world from the inside world. So that heaven would have been attached to the tabernacle. So we see he creating heaven and earth. He's going to make a new heaven and a new earth. You remember Christ said, destroy my temple. He was talking about his body and all that stuff. It's showing more, and then we become the tabernacle of the Most High. So it's showing more and more that this heaven wasn't talking about the sky. It was talking about the outer covering. But let's keep going, which is more mentality, mental things, but we can talk about that later. So now let's go to Exodus 40. We're going in, look, as we're going in order in Exodus, we're also going in order in Genesis 1. We haven't left the order yet, right? So now let me show you Exodus 40. So this is the second day, right? So now let's show you what's happening in Exodus 40. We're going to start at 21, read down to 23. Hold on, we already did that. No, we ain't. Let's start at 21. And he brought, I don't know what that was. And he brought the ark into the tabernacle and set up the veil of the covering and covered the ark of the testimony as the Lord commanded Moses. So we see that this is once again the firmament, the division of waters and etc., which deal with the Holy Spirit. So now, what's happening next? And he put the table in the tent of the congregation upon the side of the tabernacle, northward, without the veil. And he set the bread in order upon it before the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. So now, what has been introduced? First, now, the coverings have been introduced. So then what got introduced? The bread got introduced. So first of all, the covering got introduced, and now the bread got introduced. So now, once again, and he brought the ark into the tabernacle and set up the veil of the covering and covered the ark of the testimony as the Lord commanded Moses, which represented the firmament. And he put the table in the tent of the congregation upon the side of the tabernacle northward without the veil. And he set, sorry about that. Okay, there we go. And he set the bread in order upon it before the Lord as the Lord had commanded Moses. So now the bread is introduced. So let's see what happened in Genesis 1. So we got the firmament introduced, right? So now Genesis 1, we're going to read 9 to 13. And God said, let the waters under heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. So you got the dry land and you got the water, right? You got the dry land and the water. And we can see that as in, he brought the ark into, and we know the arks was on, pretty much it floated up on the water, right? But anyway, he brought the ark into the tabernacle and set up the veil of the covering and covered the ark of the testimony as the Lord commanded. And he put the table on the tent of the congregation upon the side of the veil northward without the veil. So you got the veil, then you got without the veil, you got the ark, you got all this stuff, you got the waters, you got the dry land. So the dry land is what's going on inside of the tabernacle, right? But look what's going on here. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, and the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning was the third day. So now, after the firmament was introduced, what got introduced? The land, the sea, and the herbs, the grass, the herb seeds. What was brought into the tabernacle? The bread. Where does the bread come from? It comes from the herb seeds. So you got the bread being brought into the tabernacle. You got the herbs being introduced into Genesis. It's all going in order. It's the same exact order. Moses is saying it one way in the creation narrative, and then he's doing it another way, building the tabernacle. But it's the same exact thing. Okay, so now you got the bread introduced, which was the introduction of the herb yielding seeds, right? So now let's keep going on. So we're gonna go to Exodus 40. We're gonna read 24 through 28. Now look what's happening now. And he put the candlestick in the tent of the congregation over against the table on the side of the tabernacle southward. And he lighted the lamps before the Lord as the Lord commanded Moses. And he put the golden altar in the tent of the congregation before the veil, and he burnt sweet incense thereupon as the Lord commanded Moses. And he set up the hanging at the door of the tabernacle. So now, what is introduced? Now, the candlestick is introduced, and they light the lamps. They light the lamps. So now, light is introduced, right? So first bread was introduced, then light is introduced. So now we have Genesis. Earth was introduced. So let's see what's introduced next in the book of Genesis. So you got Genesis 1:14. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth and to rule over the day and over the night, to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So you see now, light was introduced inside of the tabernacle. Mysteriously, light is introduced to the creation narrative, right? It's all going in the same exact order. So now you got light introduced. So now let's read. We got Exodus 40. We're going to read 29 and 30. And he put the altar of burnt offering by the door of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation, and he offered upon it the burnt offering and the meat offering as the Lord commanded Moses. And he set a laver between the tent of the congregation and the altar, and put water there to wash withal. So now, what do we have here? Let me look at my Septuagint real fast at this one. Let me look at this one real fast. Because that word meat there could also be a mistranslation. So let's see here. And so that'll be set up there. And he burned the incense, and then he put the altar of burnt offering before the door and tabernacle. Let's see here. Sorry about that, y'all. I got to make sure that this doesn't say bread. Put the lampstand in the tabernacle, and he placed the lamps before the Lord as the Lord commanded Moses. He also put the in front of the veil. He burned the incense upon the Lord commanded Moses. And then he put the altar of burnt offering before the tabernacle, and he set up the court. Yep, they don't even say whether it was meat or anything, but I'm taking it. It has to be. This has to be talking about real meat here, because let me show you why I believe it's talking about real meat. So now you got the burnt offering by the door, and then you got the meat offering. Yeah, that's it right there. The burnt offering, that would be dealing with the herbs, and then you got the meat offering dealing with the animals, and then you got the water, right? So now you have the animals introduced, and you got water being introduced, right? So now you had the veil being introduced, or the covering being introduced, which was the firmament. You had the bread being introduced, which was the herbs. You had the lighted lamps being introduced, which was the lights in the sky. So now you got the meat offerings, which was the animals, as well as the water that was put in the laver. You have the water and the animals being introduced. So you go to Genesis 1. Let's go to 20. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that have life, and the fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth. In the evening and the morning were the 5th day. So you have the water and the animals being introduced in Exodus 40, and then you got the waters and the animals being introduced in Genesis. I mean, it's going in order, right? You got the animal offering, the meat offering, then they're washing their hands, they add in the water, and they brought the laver in the tent, which is like a basin, and then they put the water in there to wash withal. So you got the water introduced as well as the meat offering, or you got the animals coming out of the water being introduced in Genesis, right? So now, let's keep going. So we're going to go to Exodus 40, 31 and 32. And Moses and Aaron and his son washed their hands and their feet thereat when they went into the tent of the congregation, and when they came near unto the altar, they washed as the Lord commanded. So now, who just got introduced? Aaron, which was a priest, and Moses actually doing stuff, actually finally being involved or being introduced to be involved with the service, right? So now, let's see what's being introduced in Genesis 1. We're going to start at 24 and go down to 31. And God said, let the earth bring forth. So now you got the earth bringing forth things. First, the water produced something. Now the earth is producing something. And we know the earth will represent a part of the tabernacle, right? I think it would be the outer court, I believe. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And just like Moses was a Levite, so was Aaron a Levite. So Aaron was a kind after Moses, right? He brought a priest after his own kind. Moses and Aaron were brothers. Moses was a Levite. Aaron was a Levite. He brought someone after his own kind. So there we go. But let's keep going on. And God saw it was good. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, which was, they were priests, heavenly priests. Now you got Aaron and Moses, earthly priests. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowls of the air, and over the cattle, and over the earth, and over all the earth, and over every creature that is creepeth upon the earth. So now they had dominion over the water and the earth, over the sea and the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree, in which is the fruit of the tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat, and to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given thee every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning was 6th day. So even though you don't have the women being introduced the female aspect being introduced in Exodus. You still have a man creating his own image in the image of Elohim, which would have been priest, right? To have dominion, which the Levites had dominion over Israel. Over the worship system in Israel. What else here? The creeping things, God made him, replenish and multiply, subdue. That's it. It was good, right? So now, let's see what happens now in Exodus 33 through 34. And he reared up the court round about the tabernacle and the altar, and set up the hanging of the court gate. So Moses finished the work. Then the cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. So what happened after that? Moses finished his work. What happens after this? Genesis 2:1. Thus the heaven and earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. So that was the finished product of it. And then the cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord finished the tabernacle. He was happy with the work, so he entered into his rest, which is him going inside of the tabernacle. So that was it. That's the whole thing. So we see, and we started at Exodus 40:17. We went down to Exodus 40:34. You can start at Genesis 1:1, go all the way down to Genesis 2:1 through 3. In the same order, same parallel, we can see what exactly Moses is actually talking about. He's using different scenarios to explain the importance of worshiping the Father. That's all he's doing. He's using a story that they was familiar with, and then he piggybacked off of that story to explain to them, or to give a path, or to give I like to say path, a live model or a mental model on how they was going to create the tabernacle. Because most of them looked at the earth itself as the tabernacle of the Most High. They looked at the universe as part of the temple aspect of the Most High. So what Moses was saying was, what I saw in heaven, we got to do it on earth. I used the heavenly elements. I used the heavenly model to create something on earth. Just like he created the heavenly temple, we're going to create an earthly temple, and our earthly temple is going to be the practice model on what's going to happen when the Messiah comes, or when that prophet come and lead you all to a new direction. Because Moses, he was given the task of working with Israel, who just came out of harsh bondage, who just came out of watching the Egyptians create their own covenants and treaties, and how they interacted with each other inside of their environment, how they did their sacrifices in temple worship. So Moses had to work with that type of people, that type of mindset, and try to set them or steer them in the way of the Most High. And that's what he did through, he didn't get rid of their sacrificial system. He didn't get rid of, he just changed up their diets to explain to them the deeper meaning on the Most High. He changed up the way that they interacted with each other to explain to them the deeper meaning on how the Most High wanted them to act, and how he wanted them to be the proxies of all of the other nations, and etc. And then when Christ came upon the scene, Christ said, okay, it's time for us to get rid of this temple. It's time for us to get back in a real covenant. It's been 1,500 years. We didn't have enough time to evolve. You guys that went through several captivities. Y'all know what it is to not be reliant on the temple. This is what happened in the Babylonian captivity. Y'all know how it is to turn your hearts to the Most High and not need a temple. And when Ezra and them came back and created the temple, it wasn't in the glory of the first temple. Ezra had to pretty much redo the Torah. He had his own little aspects to it, like you can't marry a foreigner and all that stuff, which Moses allowed. The Egyptians actually came with them, and then when they did conquer each other, when they conquered their enemies, the women had to shave their heads off and mourn for their loved ones that lost their lives in the war, in the battle. But they was to, after they got done with their mourning, they could marry their captives. They didn't have to be Israel. So Ezra came through and he redid that and said, okay, now you got to be Israelite, only Israel on Israel, and priest. You had to provide your genealogy records to really show that you was priest and all that stuff. But anyway, so you have the Babylonian coming in, right? Then you got them freed by the Medo-Persian. You got Ezra coming in. Then eventually you got the Greeks coming in, where finally, the Jews start saying, okay, let's listen to some of the Greek mindset. They Hellenized themselves. They got more into Grecian philosophy. Some of them then start looking at the Bible or the Scripture as a different aspect, and they start uncovering more knowledge that wasn't prepared, that those earlier Israelites kind of missed, because they was kind of wrapped up into the story and not the meat of the understanding. So that's during the Greek captivity, when the Hellenization came in, and then you got the Roman captivity when Christ finally come in. He's telling them, okay, it's about time. This whole temple system is finna leave. It's gonna come a time where the only way you're gonna worship the Father is gonna be in spirit and in truth. No more coming to this Jerusalem to worship Him 3 times a year for your feast days or etc. No more high priest. No more none of that. Now you're gonna be you're gonna be the priest. I'm gonna be the high priest. You're gonna be the priest. You're going to be the kings. You're going to be the Levites. You're going to be the Jews. You're going to be Judah. Everybody's going to be either Levites and Judah. No more blood. No more quote unquote bloodlines and etc. And you have to love your brothers and blah blah blah, this and that. And that's when the disciples come upon teaching people, getting them ready for the new covenant. Bringing out the information, and you got Paul coming in and saying, hey, okay, this is all happening, but there is a mystery. I learned straight from Christ. I was taken up. I didn't learn from him while he was on earth. I learned from him while he was in spirit, while he already received the revelation, and he gave me the revelation. And the revelation is, we're going to do what Isaiah said now, and we're going to bring in the Gentiles. So that's what Paul was doing. And the Gentiles, then they had to worry about the conversion. Are we going to have the Gentiles do what the Jews were doing? If so, this new movement is just going to be another area of Judaism. We're just going to add Christ to it. It's just going to be Judaism with a little aspect of the gospel. Then they're like, no, we're not going to do that. When we bring these people in, we're going to tell them they don't have to be circumcised. So that perpetual covenant of circumcision was uplifted, which meant that perpetual doesn't mean everlasting, because it was said that it was going to be an everlasting covenant of circumcision. But they agreed during that Council of Jerusalem that those Gentiles did not have to be circumcised, which before that they had to be circumcised, which shows you the perpetual doesn't mean everlasting. Everlasting did not mean everlasting to them. If it did, they could not tell the Gentiles they did not have to be circumcised, because everybody had to be circumcised according to the Torah, according to get the covenant or the promise of Abraham. Where the covenant of promise of Abraham was delivered, no longer requiring the circumcision of the flesh, only the circumcision of the heart. So we keep fast forwarding it until what we have, Jerusalem fall, new heaven and earth introduced, which is the people now. The people is the temple. The people is the church, right? The people are the kings and the priests. The kingdom is within the people. And we know kingdom doesn't mean castle, okay? It doesn't mean building. It means authority. authority of a ruler. So if you are in the kingdom, that just means you're under the authority of the ruler. So we are under the authority of Christ now. If you follow Christ, you are under his authority. And in order to be in his kingdom, you have to have the Holy Spirit. You get the Holy Spirit, you're under his authority. That makes you a part of his kingdom. His kingdom is not a kingdom that can be observed or come with hands. See, all of this stuff is Hebraic idioms. It's Hebraic literature. This is the same thing Moses was doing. He was using idiom. He was using things that they can see, things that they dealt with every day to teach them lessons using the things, because at that point in time coming out of Egypt, the whole understanding, see, everybody did not have Moses' understanding, okay? Moses had his understanding because he grew up in the king's court, okay? Daniel had an understanding because he was able to be taught in the king's court, okay? By the time the Greeks came around, Greeks said, we're going to give everybody wisdom, okay? So the wisdom that Moses got, the wisdom that Daniel, all them had, it did not get expanded and brought out until the Greeks came, who were thinkers and who were philosophers and who loved debating and who loved different material from different areas and debating it and coming up with different ideologies and strategies. During that time period, the society as a whole was able to open up to the knowledge. See, when Moses was around, the society did not get the knowledge. They were workers. They were slaves. They were in the mines. They did not have a deeper understanding of knowledge and wisdom. Moses did because he was able to grow up in that environment. Daniel was able to grow up in that environment. All the nobles was able to grow up in that environment. But by the time the Greeks came along, the Greek Alexander said, we're going to take all information and we're going to send it to everybody, and everybody who listens, they're going to get it. So by the time Rome came around in the 1st century, information had already expanded and broadened out. So Christ did not have to come and try to give the world a different literature and stuff. What he came and did, he said, now that everybody's thinkers, where I'm living in a time period where everybody's are thinkers now, let me explain to you in our same mindset what the Father really meant. Let me explain to you what Moses really meant. Let me explain to you what you're doing wrong, because you have the knowledge now. You just don't know how to apply it. So let me show you how to apply it. Y'all applying it wrong. You're too worried about the carnality. You don't know how to apply it and change your inner being so you can be something that the Most High could use. You cannot see the kingdom. See, if they did not need Christ, right? If that wasn't the time period that Christ needed to come, then the Father would not have set him up like that, right? Nobody ever thought, why did he come under the Roman time period? Why did he come when Rome was in charge? Why did he come when they first started making roads in which everybody can travel? So now at this point in time, before Rome came around and started creating these roads made of mortar or whatever they was using for the road, I saw it on the History Channel during the Roman time period. Travel expanded expeditionally. I guess I said it right. But anyway, travel expanded abroad because the technology that Rome had and the understanding that Rome had. So at this point in time, now, not only through sea, but through horseback and stuff, information was able to go, which is the spreading of information. So why did Christ not come in our timeline or our time period? He came in the time period that he needed to, because that's the time period when the thinkers was around. See, we don't got no real thinkers today, but that time period, that's when the thinkers was around, and they was able to take the information and warp it into a way that benefited the Most High. So that's what Christ came to do. He said, okay, let me show you how to apply it now. And I'm going to leave when I leave, the Holy Spirit's going to come. And I only had 40 years. I only had 3 years, 3.5 years to teach you guys. The Holy Spirit is going to be with you for the rest of your life. He's going to, whatever you want to call wisdom, feminine spirit, the feminine energy is going to explain and teach you everything you need to know. for the rest of your life. Take that information and take it out to society. Create disciples everywhere you go. Create people that's all about that love and togetherness everywhere you go, and then you will see my kingdom. Okay, y'all, I am done. You think I've been rambling on? I've been rambling on enough. But I have showed you that Genesis 1 through 2 was actually about the temple and the tabernacle system, or the system of worship being set up. That's all it was. He wasn't trying to explain to you how the well came about, okay? He wasn't trying to explain to you how a barrel was made. He wasn't trying to explain to you why bulls was on the earth and where bulls came from. That's not what he was explaining to you. He was explaining to them how they are to worship the Father. And we are to take that same information and make us better individuals and make us be thankful of the new covenant, and us try to bring as many people as we can into the new covenant, and so forth and so on, and create disciples for the Most High. All right. I love you all. RPK. Look us up on YouTube. Stand for Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom. You see the shirts in the background. RPK, RPK, RPK. You can tell they're in different colors. Hope you guys like them. Look us up on YouTube. Click the bell. Also, AOSDCHANDLER, Assembly of Sound Doctrine channel. On that's my personal YouTube channel, also where I go into detail about this certain aspect, like the Jewish war, who was Enoch, stuff like that. Stuff that I don't do here on RPK, Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom, where we concentrate on Resurrection, Prophecy, and Kingdom. This channel, this university here, is dedicated to teach you the things that we're supposed to be doing, or to give you a deeper meaning of Scripture so we can understand how we are in the kingdom of heaven and the way we can present that information to other people. My Assembly of Sound Doctrine channel is just to explain different biblical concepts and different information, okay? They can work hand in hand. You need both of them to understand where I'm coming from or where some of the people in my group are coming from. But, you can do it. Everything you really need is here on RPK. If you want some deeper stuff, different stuff, go to my other channel, AOSDCHANDLER. Love you all. Thank you all for listening, and share the message. We are in the kingdom. Y'all have a blessed night. It is time for me to get out. This close the series of Genesis. Now, next series, the feast days, right? Let's get into the real understanding of the feast days. Love you all. Have a great night. Shalom.